Alright, so we're going to be watching this video called The Slow and Sad Death of the Murder Drones Fandom. This is a video by Vanity Moth, and knowing me, I've been living under a rock and I have not been kept up with the community since then. So I'm curious to wonder what the heck has been going on with the fandom.
Dumboy, Mikey.
The Amazing Digital Circus has been wildly successful, gaining 200 million views in only 2 months and doubling Glitch's subscriber count. But it's easy to forget that among all the successful milestones, publicity, fan art, and the show's popularity, there has been a quiet death within the Glitch community that has been completely overshadowed. Glitch Productions was a small company born out of a web series known as SMG4. Their first big series was a show called Meta Runner, and while that series garnered millions of views, it never found a foothold in the overall web animation culture. Then Glitch launched Murder Drones, a show that catapulted Glitch into the spotlight and gained internet-wide acclaim, becoming the second biggest web series on the internet next to Helva Boss, with Murder Drones pilot to this day having more views than any episode in Helva Boss's second season.
That's crazy.
Yeah, Murder Drones was a triumph for Glitch, with some of the biggest animation reviewers recognizing it, and there being plenty of reaction videos for every episode.
Wait, hold up. Why am I not on the list? Oh yeah, forget. I'm a small channel. I'm not known for anything yet.
But nobody could have expected that before Murder Drone's first season was even completed, the fanbase would completely and utterly fall apart. You see, ever since the show released its first episode, the fandom did what every fandom does, and shipped characters together.
Oh yeah, that is true. The whole thing that's been happening with Murder Drones, at least what I'm aware of, is that Ann and Uzi were seemingly getting to know each other a little bit closer than we thought. And so I'm assuming that fandom was pushing out to ship these two. I don't know if the creator was like too much involved with the community like that, or the devs or whatnot was like, okay, let's just take this idea and give the fans what they want type thing, right? So I'm assuming they did that, and I guess it just didn't play out as they thought it would. I may be thinking too much into this, but just let me know in the comments.
This was relatively harmless and to be expected, but things got more complicated than they ever needed to be when it came to shipping one of the main characters, N. In the pilot episode, N claimed to have a crush on a supporting character named V, but a large number of the fanbase wanted N to be in a relationship with the show's main character, Uzi, and created an overwhelming amount of fan art about them, and like any fandom, there were the typical arguments between the N and V shippers and the N and Uzi shippers. Again, shipping and ship wars are to be expected in every fandom, and usually cause at most some petty arguments, but it didn't take long for fans to notice that there was a glaring and very concerning issue when it came to shipping N and Uzi. N and Uzi have no established ages. There was no way to know how old N was in the—
Yeah, that's what I was just about to say this. In what way has anybody confirmed anything about these characters' ages? Saying they're like age 18 or 20. I'm like, where did y'all get this information from? I'm so out of the loop with this scenario that I'm like, bro, what?
The only hint we got for Uzi's age is that she was in high school. So assuming the school she goes to is based on the American education system, she's at the youngest 14 and at the oldest 18. This was a big wake-up call for the Murder Drone shipping community, because it was very likely that the Newsy shippers were shipping a minor with an adult. It has been implied throughout the show that Uzi doesn't remember her mother, meaning that her mother must have died when she was very young, and it's stated by Uzi's father that she was killed by a disassembly drone. There was no mention of how long it had been between the disassembly drones first arriving on the planet and the events of the pilot, but N is one of the 3 disassembly drones to arrive on the planet. And if Uzi can't remember her mother because she was so young, well, it's very possible that N could have been over a decade older than her. Meaning that N could have been a teenager when Uzi was still a baby or a toddler. So with this realization, the shipping between N and Uzi—
If we're going by the American knowledge. Yo, what?
Uzi was labeled a pro ship, which is a ship that is deemed problematic in some way, with this instance being a large age difference and possibly even shipping an adult and a minor. And this is where the ship
now I feel
wars
disgusted.
between Envy and Newsy shippers went from petty arguing to complete hostility.
What
Newsy shippers were being labeled as pro shippers, which was the equivalent of accusing someone of supporting underage relationships, which is a label that can bring a lot of hate down on the person labeled as such. As one could imagine, many Newsy shippers were enraged at being labeled this, and the ship war went from bickering about fictional characters to one side implying the other was pedophiles and that side desperately having to defend themselves.
Okay, another thought about this. These are drones. If they are implying, yes, that Uzi is a freaking minor, then people at the fandom are wrong for that. For me personally, I just think of them as like drones without age or anything like that. They are built to last for like thousands of years. They never really elaborate on how they're given like growth and whatnot. I just remember in the past episodes that Uzi was just like a little baby at the time. I don't know how long has it been since then. They never really told us about it. They just grew up and that's just about it. I'm assuming they'll have some kind of closure within the last 2 episodes. But yeah, y'all go ahead and let me know in the comments.
From those accusations. This started some of the most hostile and vicious ship debates I think I have ever seen in a fandom. Newsy shippers were harassed, had their accounts combed through for any condemning evidence that they were pedophiles, and in some extreme instances even doxxed. This caused a large number of newsy shippers and fan artists to leave the fanbase altogether, but it didn't stop there. The sheer amount of vitriol that was displayed was so unappealing that people who weren't even engaged in the ship wars witnessed it and decided that they didn't want to be associated with such a hateful fandom, and many underage fans left as well after hearing about these allegations. Keep in mind, the primary demographic for this show ranges from the age of 10 to 16, so to have that age group feel unsafe was a massive blow to the reputation the Murder Drones community had at the time. It even got to the point where there was a small number of Murder Drones fans who did a deep dive into the background of the show's creator to see if he had any problematic age gaps in any of his previous works.
Yeah, and I said this before. Murder Drones series should have been like rated R. If we're gonna have problems like this, you might as well make this a freaking rated R show or something. Because I understand it's mostly catered to like teenagers, right? But if we're gonna have problems like this, you might as well just make it R rated.
In an attempt to cancel him. But thankfully no truly condemning evidence was ever found, and it died out pretty quickly, but it just goes to show how seriously fans of the show were taking this. It wasn't until the 4th episode of Murder Drones when this controversy finally simmered down, when N said this line.
I am! Uzi is! She's a kid, like us, V! What is wrong with you?
To this day, I am almost positive that this line was added in to calm the fanbase down, which it did, but the controversy still wasn't quite snuffed out. The newsy shippers felt vindicated and celebrated, but the other fans pointed out that the issue wasn't that their ship wasn't as problematic as they thought, but that the remaining newsy shippers continued to do so to this point, even though there was a very real possibility that they were in the wrong, yet continued to ship N and Uzi anyways. The anger and hatred from both sides never again reached the boiling point it did before episode 4 premiered, but the bitterness remained and plenty of people still called newsy shippers pro-shippers, and in response, some newsy shippers were just as hateful when defending themselves. Ironically enough, this controversy did come to an end and truly died, but it took the death of a character and a whole new controversy to do so. At the end of episode 6, V was told off.
Wow. Oh, come on. Don't bring up V now. All this just to appease the fan base, to kill off V? Oh, this is why you don't ever listen to the fans. If you're gonna write a story, do it how you feel is right. Don't listen to the fandom. Like, I have a story of my own too. I will never publish it until I'm actually ready to publish it. But you can't, there's only so much you can do. At this point, you're not even writing your own story. You're writing it for the fans. And that's not staying true to yourself. If this was the case, all of this just to kill off V, we might see V how J ended up at one point.
Even though there was a lot of people who praised the show for having consequences, and many were heartbroken but still appreciated what the show was aiming for, there were still those who left the fanbase over it, be it just hating the decision to kill her off, or the envy shippers who had been at war with the newsy shippers for so long, having finally lost. This character's death was very controversial, with many feeling it unnecessary, pointless, or easily avoidable, and a small number of fans even sent death threats to Glitch and the show's creator over it. This was a very emotional time for the Murder Drones fanbase, and many wanted their questions answered in the next episode, or to just have a new episode so they didn't have to continually think about.
I'm gonna say this once, and I'm gonna say this once only. For those who even said or done anything against murder, like the creators, the developers, no, please just go see a therapist. Do I have to call somebody or let anybody know? Give them a hotline? leave a number or something.
Of V's death. But instead of the Murder Drones fanbase getting answers, they were instead introduced to a new internet group that also had some very strong opinions on the show. Let me introduce you to the YouTube Troll Police,
Oh,
more
God.
commonly known as the UTTP.
The
The
UTTP.
UTTP is an internet organization that has been around since roughly as early as 2010.
They've been
to
around.
scourge YouTube for fan bases or YouTube channels they dislike, and as their namesake suggests, troll them. They usually do this by spamming channels' comment sections or by harassing Twitter users who post content related to whatever fanbase or YouTuber they
Yep, I've been
disapprove of.
through that.
So wouldn't you know it, shortly after the 6th episode of Murder Drones was released, the UTTP set their sights on Murder Drones fandom and started harassing the fans. Their typical way of doing so is to
I've
go
been
on Twitter and
harassed.
Photoshop fake statements of Murder Drone fan artists to frame them as an advocator of incest or as owners of CP, or threaten to dox them. And you would be surprised how effective this campaign against Murder Drones fan artists was. Like I said earlier, the Murder Drones fans' average age range is around 10 to 16 years old. So when you're in that age range and see fake allegations made toward you or are threatened of being doxxed, it isn't unreasonable to be legitimately scared and delete your account, which many Murder Drones fan artists did in reaction to the UTTP targeting them. Now in reality, the UTTP are allegedly made up of mostly bots to make them seem bigger than they are, and to most are a complete joke that shouldn't be taken seriously. But the impact they had on the Murder Drone fan art part of the fanbase was very real. But they wouldn't linger around the Murder Drones fandom for long, because only a couple of months later, they found a bigger fish to fry when Glitch released The Amazing Digital Circus. So what happens when you are an upset or impatient fan in a fan base that is in an uproar while simultaneously being targeted by a group of internet trolls, and then you are introduced to another show that took the internet by storm, all your friends are talking about, you constantly see being shared over social media, is a goldmine for memes, and is arguably one of the most popular things on the internet, right after the previous show left off on a bitter note. Well, there's no way to know how many people left the Murder Drones fandom in favor of the Amazing Digital Circus, but if I had to guesstimate, I would say that less than half of the Murder Drone fanbase remains. This is a tough situation because by releasing the Amazing Digital Circus, Murder Drones is now always going to be seen as the inferior Glitch show. And now there will be those who just will complain about how Glitch is continuing production on Murder Drones instead of putting all their effort into finishing the show that has a pilot with more views than every single episode of Murder Drones combined. But in Glitch's defense, what could have they really have done?
They can't.
They could have waited until the next episode of Murder Drones, but with that being the penultimate episode of the show, Digital Circus would have just undermined the hype for the finale. And if they chose to wait until Murder Drones had finished, they would have had to wait until everyone had settled down from the ending, and at that point they would have been sitting on a fully finished episode for over 6 months, which would be pretty irritating for both the showrunner and the people who worked on it. So with the fanbase at this point in shambles, a new episode of Murder Drones needed to be released as soon as possible to lighten the mood and give something new for the fans to focus on so they wouldn't be left ruminating over a controversial character death and the UTTP. Glitch then announced a live stream called Glitch X where there would be interviews with the showrunners working with Glitch Productions, Q&As, drawing and voice acting activities, and highlights of the indie animation industry. Murder Drones fans were hyped, and they were ready for a tease at the next episode of the show, which based on the show's release schedule at that time, would be getting a new episode within the coming weeks. Well, the fans got their teaser, and it was awesome, and they got their release date, but I don't think anyone expected it to be this.
Yep. Episode 7 and 8 coming spring. Nobody expected that.
For context, episode 6 of Murder Drones came out in August of 2023. Assuming that the next episode of the show were to come out in March at the earliest, that is a 7-month gap between episodes. At the time of writing this video, it has been 4 months since Murder Drones' last episode, and it feels like a distant memory. Fan artists have left in droves, either due to all the controversies they went through or to make fan art on the Amazing Digital Circus, which gets them way more attention than any Murder Drones fan art did. A lot of diehard fans who were spellbound by the show are beginning to notice the flaws the show has as the honeymoon phase wears off, and unless Glitch pulls off an amazing marketing campaign for the last 2 episodes, the hype for the next episode isn't really there. Sure, the fans are still looking
That's
forward
still
to
there
the
for
next
me.
episode, but as is with every show, the number of people who come back after the hiatus will only lessen the longer they wait. To give you an idea, let's take Gravity Falls, one of the most awarded and well-received animated series of the last decade. According to Wikipedia, which yes, I know isn't always reliable, but humor me, the season 1 finale had an estimated 3.18 million viewers before it went on a year-long hiatus.
Yeah.
The season 2 premiere only had 2.37 million, which was the second most viewed episode of season 2, only being out by the series finale that had 2.47 million. For context
Started
of
to
how
lose
steep
viewership.
of a drop-off in viewership this was, the least popular episode of season 1 had an estimated viewership of 2.70 million. Obviously, take these estimates with a grain of salt because there are a lot of variables behind this, such as Gravity Falls switching channel ownership between seasons 1 and 2, but I think you understand the point I'm trying to make. So, to summarize, the Murder Drones fandom were at each other's throat for months over who N should be with. Many fans had allegations made against them that they advocate for underage relationships. The Murder Drones fanbase gained a reputation for having one of the most vicious shipping communities of any web series. The show left off on an extremely controversial and bitter note. The fandom has been targeted by one of the biggest troll groups on the internet. The Amazing Digital Circus completely overshadowed Murder Drones' relevance in the web animation sphere.
Wow.
And the show is on a hiatus lasting longer than half a year. Does the fandom sound like it's in a good place to you? Look, I
No,
don't
it
mean
does
to come
not.
off as fatalistic, and it's always possible that the next episode of Murder Drones could win the fanbase back over, and Glitch can create a satisfying ending to the series, but there is no denying that the damage to the fanbase has been done, and its legacy will be nothing more than an example of how a fanbase can destroy itself.
That's freaking crazy. And that's just about it, I guess.
But worst of all, this all distracted everyone from the fact that a side character like Lizzie and Tessa, who wasn't introduced until episode 3, got merged before Jay did.
You know what? That's freaking wild. How the frick did Tessa and that one person got merged before Jay did? That's some questionable market plans. So what I've got out of this is that the fandom itself was basically toxic this whole time. Keep in mind, I've been living under a rock, so I don't freaking know what be going on in the fandom other than what the frick I be seeing on the comic dub side of things. So whatever ups and downs these people might have gone through, and the fact that we had to wait like a whole half-year hiatus just for the new 7 and 8 episodes to come out sometime soon, probably next month or so, I just learned that you cannot trust the fandom no matter what and how good things are and how the story is written. Because people will take things out of the ordinary and they will do what they must to secure some kind of privilege or some way. I don't freaking know. The fandom is weird. I'm not part of it. I would never be a part of something like that. Like, if I'm a fan of a character, then yeah, I'll like the character for what they are and not what people are making out to make them to be, which is it's how the story is written. If the character is written a certain way, it is said to be that way for a reason. If people are coming out to make it out the character that they're not supposed to be written as, that I don't know, that's not the author's writing. That's people trying to make things up for the characters. Anyways, that was the slow and sad death of the Murder Drones fandom. See you later.